With YouTubers, the question is no longer what are they, it's what aren't they? They are chefs, journalists, musicians, athletes, pilots, late night hosts, chocolate brands, war sympathizers. Genuinely, what aren't they? I want to say something crazy like arms traders, but I have a feeling someone in the comments will be like, well, there is this ex-Minecraft YouTuber. So it should come off as no surprise that some YouTubers have made the transition into Hollywood as filmmakers. Although this isn't a new phenomenon, in the last few years the number has risen a significant amount, and who knows if it will be slowing down. Not only are they growing in numbers, but their films also bring some serious noise, with almost all of them being distributed by cinephile darlings such as A24 and Neon, companies who are well known to have their fingers on the pulse. This raises the question, has YouTube become a new talent pipeline for Hollywood? Or are these filmmakers simply just some special exceptions? In this video, I'll be going through the filmmaker turned YouTubers, their stories, and see what they have in common. I filmed this video a month and a half ago, and it's been a crazy month for certain filmmakers on this list, so occasionally future me will be chiming in. Okay, cool. Roll the intro now. I want to start things off with a little test, a little question to see if you're eligible for a YouTube Veterans discount. Do you recognize this thumbnail? I'm not even asking if you've seen the short or not. The thumbnail is enough for your qualification. Because who knows how many times I've seen it. It's actually quite nostalgic for me. I loved the video game Portal, and after the second game had come out, YouTube was flooded with tons of fan films dedicated to it. However, this short film titled No Escape was in a league of its own. If you didn't know, it's directed by none other than one of the Totally Rad Show hosts, Dan Trachtenberg. If his name doesn't ring a bell, he's the filmmaker who single-handedly put the Predator franchise back on its feet with Prey, Killer of Killers, and Badlands. However, he had his start with 10 Cloverfield Lane, still my favorite film of his. His aforementioned video podcast, The Totally Rad Show, is something that nowadays we have in great abundance online. Everyone and their grandma is talking about movies, games, TV, and comics.
What did you think about it?
I liked it. I've never seen any of the Fantastic Four movies, but...
However, according to Trachtenberg back in 2007, when they started it, there wasn't really a show that discussed these things with the enthusiasm and passion of his friend group. I mention this because it's exactly that love for video games and comics you find in his filmography, which I believe to be one of his core strengths. The whole structure of Badlands very much plays like a video game, and his Black Mirror episode Playtest is literally about one. While Killer of Killers and Prey very much feel like high concepts dreamt up by comic book artists who don't need the permission to sketch dope shit. So what's Trachtenberg's story? Is it as predictable as he made the Portal short, it went viral, and then Hollywood opened its doors? Kind of. Before he made No Escape, he directed a horror short called More Than You Can Chew, which was part of the horror anthology series Black Box TV. And apparently it was that short which got him his initial Hollywood meetings. But after No Escape, the studios became more interested in his ideas.
No! No! Don't open that door! They're going to get all of us killed!
After compiling all the filmmaker turned YouTubers, I found out that they pretty much fall into one of two categories. Before I tell you the two categories, let me just clarify by saying that in this video I will be talking about filmmakers that have had wide theatrical releases or have worked with a studio system either to get their films distributed or made. So, the two categories are 1. Short film discoveries, and 2. Established statuses. So in this case, Dan Trachtenberg would fall under, you guessed it, short film discoveries. Even though the Totally Rad Show had a following, it was primarily his work as a filmmaker and storyteller that allowed him to go into Hollywood. If I were to give an example for an established status, it would be Channel 5's Andrew Callaghan. With his directorial debut, This Place Rules, produced by A24 and released on HBO. As I've said in my intro, you'll be hearing A24's name a lot in this video. So, how did This Place Rules come to be? Well, if you've seen the film, you know that it's pretty much a feature-length Channel 5 video, with maybe a little bit more visual variety than usual. By this point, Andrew Callaghan not only had an established audience, but also a promising career as a gonzo journalist and documentary filmmaker. So, Tim Heidecker and A24 basically ordered what was already working online, but in a longer form, and for a larger audience.
This is only the beginning.
What's the end?
There is no end.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, there's a subcategory called, yeah, sure, why not? It's worth mentioning. Bo Burnham, for an instance, would fall under that category. You could call Bo Burnham a YouTuber, sure, it's not a lie, but that's like calling Dwayne Johnson a college football star, rather than an actor or a wrestler. YouTube functioned as a launchpad for Bo, rather than a place where he built his career. Then again, I suppose this video is about how YouTube functioned as a launchpad for filmmakers. You get the point. Because what I'm trying to say is that getting 8th grade off the ground for Bo Burnham was not really a David and Goliath story, like it's been with most YouTubers trying to prove their credibility as an artist. Bo Burnham, while maybe not a titan of the industry, was fairly well known with loads of acclaim, especially for someone in his 20s. It apparently still took him years to get this project off the ground, but I suppose that is just the nature of this business. So yeah, that's why it lands in the, yeah, sure, why not? It's worth mentioning category. Plus, it's a great film. A great film that has aged like wine by aging like milk in only a matter of 8 years, if you catch my drift. Also, it was produced and distributed by A24.
I said one more week of 8th grade, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, huh?
The other filmmaker sharing the category alongside Bo Burnham is Kogonada, the filmmaker behind Columbus, a film I absolutely adore and a film that benefits from the added context of who made it. Columbus is about many things, but one of the central themes is passion and being moved and how that feeling defies explanation. That frustration with words is exactly what got Kogonada into video essays, allowing him to communicate on film in the form of editing. His video essays include Hands of Bresson, Kubrick's one-point perspective, and my favorite, what is neorealism. If the name hadn't rung a bell before, maybe his work has. Video essays were popularized around the mid-2010s on YouTube, with new channels popping up left and right, and almost all of them were inspired by the OG, Every Frame a Painting, a rite of passage for film students. Kogonada, on the other hand, didn't even have a YouTube channel. His work does exist on this platform, but it's either through people uploading his stuff from Vimeo or through the companies who've commissioned his work, like Sight and Sound and Criterion. So there you go. Do you see why he falls into this category now?
I started getting invited and commissioned to make more. You know, a festival director called me and said, would you ever think about making a film? It really opened the door to becoming a filmmaker.
It's certainly a unique journey for a filmmaker, but one that doesn't neatly fit the YouTuber to filmmaker pipeline. Alas, sure, why not? It's worth the mention. Also, his second film, After Yang, produced and distributed by A24. With the next filmmaker, we're breaking the A24 streak. He's done some big stuff. In fact, that's all he's done, with not one but 2 comic book movies under his belt. Of course, I'm talking about David F. Sandberg, aka Pony Smasher, on YouTube. He made his feature-length debut with Lights Out, an adaptation of his short with the same name. This lands him in the short film discovery category. I remember watching the short, I vividly remember watching the short in a shopping mall with my cousin on mute and still being scared. To be fair, we were the perfect age, but all to say that the short was simple, effective, and super viral. And simple. Wait, did I say simple twice? Good. I meant to. For Sandberg, YouTube was a public portfolio for his creative work, which at the time mostly consisted of animations. This was for the practical reason to work solo, making films and telling stories without having to rely on other people. So it makes sense that when he did eventually pick up a camera, it was either him starring opposite himself or horror shorts starring his wife and his wife only. It's actually crazy how a short this straightforward made producers in Hollywood go, please work with us. But of course, it's not all to do with crafting effective jump scares, but going viral. Since then being 2013, horror shorts have grown larger and larger online, not only in popularity but also in their budget and concepts. They've become more slick, more creepy, more bloody, more. There's tons, and I'm certain you'll find dozens more chilling and impressive than Lights Out, but they cannot all be getting bombarded with calls from Hollywood. An oversaturated market is what all filmmakers struggle with and try to navigate around. And in this day and age, going viral is very difficult and it's not what it once used to be, but some short films still manage to do the rounds in the right circles. This is a great segue, but I have some final words on David F. Sandberg. Even though he's a very well-off Hollywood filmmaker at this point, he's still active on his YouTube channel. He uploads making-ofs, advice from his filmmaking journey, the odd Blender tutorial, and horror shorts. I respect that a lot. He truly does it for the love of the game, while passing down knowledge for the future generations. Anyway, speaking of horror shorts that still manage to go viral, just a few weeks ago, YouTube/short horror filmmaker Dylan Clark, who's behind the viral hits Transfigure and Portrait of God, was announced as the director of the new Blair Witch Project. Yes, they are making a new one. Nothing says Hollywood like attaching young talent to direct reboots of films directed by young talent. But that's not all. He's also got an original film in the making, which will be the adaptation of his short Portrait of God, produced by Jordan Peele and Sam Raimi. Maybe the most insane flex I've seen for a filmmaker in a while. What do you mean you are the talent that brought those two filmmakers together on a project? As producers, but still. I mean, look, producer James Harris, who's produced many low-budget horror films over the years, has stated that he views YouTube as a place for undiscovered talent. That's a bad idea. That's the name of Curry Barker and his buddy Cooper Tomlin's YouTube channel, where they primarily post funny sketches starring themselves.
I'm thrilled when she wants me to be thrilled.
Sounds like you're getting screwed.
I'm actually not.
However, their most popular video is the occasional exception on the channel, where Curry Barker trades laughs for fears. The Chair is the viral short that piqued James Harris's interest, which led to him signing on Barker to direct what became Obsession, a film that just got released as of me filming this. Yet it already catapulted Barker's career to crazy heights. The success story of Obsession at the time of me filming this was the fact that it was shot for under $1 million and it was sold at TIFF to Blumhouse for $15 million. Now the success story has only become crazier. Obsession became one of the most profitable films ever, and the only film since E.T. to have increasing weekly box office numbers. He's got 2 more films on the way, one with Blumhouse and Texas Chainsaw Massacre for A24. Oh, and he just signed another deal with Universal for another film. Nuts. He's made 1 film and he's already been given a cornerstone of horror cinema to play with. Wrong. He's actually made 2 films. Just one of them is theatrical. The other one uploaded straight on YouTube. Before Obsession, Barker's feature debut was a micro-budget found-footage horror named Milk and Cereal, which he just uploaded on his YouTube channel rather than releasing it with a distributor, which apparently they had found. If the success of The Chair proved anything, it's that YouTube's a damn good distribution tool anyway, especially if you already have a following that will give you the head start you might need. Milk and Cereal made quite the noise online and landed him even more meetings with studios in Hollywood. but by that point he was already busy with directing Obsession. So perhaps it shouldn't come off as a surprise that he's a sought-out name in Hollywood, since he's proven that he's not a one-trick pony before even making it to the big screen. And Obsession is very good.
I was calling to see if there's a way I can cancel a wish.
I'm sorry, we don't really do that.
So she's just stuck like this forever?
Well, yeah, I mean, as long as you live.
But not every filmmaker that the internet catapults into Hollywood arrives as an underdog. This brings us to Wesley Wang, director of Nothing Except Everything, a viral short which caused quite the divide online. The film brought a lot of noise, which made TriStar Pictures jump on board to buy the adaptation rights. And then it really made a lot of noise. Not the good kind. Currently on Letterboxd, the film sits at a 2.3 rating, which is nothing compared to the onslaught of 1-star and half-star reviews occupying the most popular reviews section, with many of them not only being targeted at the film itself, but also the oblivious privilege of its filmmaker. It's hard. On one hand, I really do feel for Wesley Wang, who was 19 years old when he made the film. But then, I remember myself at 19, shooting a short back home in Turkey with a DSLR and nothing else. My last summer back home, before moving abroad, away from my friends and family, to pursue a dream of mine, a pursuit I'm still in and might be my entire life. So it's hard not to be annoyed to see wealth continue to open up doors for people, regardless of their talent. And even though Wesley Wang didn't create this system, in his short film he talks about the meaning or the meaningless of life with the confidence that people only with a certain privilege carry.
And definitely, there's no meaning to my pretentious, nihilistic, and edgy attempt at self-awareness for the sake of self-awareness.
What differentiates this short from the other shorts that I've shot into the stratosphere is that this short doesn't really feel like it needs you or me. It's a complete package. It got made with a hefty budget, feeding the bellies of a full-on film crew and cast. It also has cleared the rights to songs indie features would struggle to, by acts like Beach House, Wolf Alice, and Two Door Cinema Club. If he can afford to get a short like this made at 19, I don't think he'll be struggling getting a feature off the ground once he's old enough to drink in his local bar. In that sense, it doesn't feel like an underdog story that was lifted into higher echelons by the internet having a liking to it. That's why so many people, rightfully jealous of its success and the filmmaker's privileges, decided to voice their distaste for it. We all already know how incestuous and gate-kept the industry is. That's what makes fresh voices emerging from the internet so inspiring and exciting.
Miles, it's really not that complicated. Go to a good college, get a job, and die.
A young buck that the internet pretty much championed and gave birth to is Kane Parsons, aka Kane Pixels, aka the Backrooms guy. I believe the origins of Backrooms is traced back to a 4chan post, and Kane Parsons essentially just popularized the concept through his viral short film. Over time, he has built a whole world and story arc around it through the web series on his YouTube channel. And that is the IP that A24 and Atomic Monster got their hands on, because it wasn't really considered an intellectual property before the short. I am personally very excited for the film. I am personally very excited for the film, and a big part of my excitement is attributed to Parsons' age. Pause. Let's clarify. In an interview with IndieWire, star of the film and our hearts, Renate Reinsve, said, quote, "He was very sure of what he wanted, and I love that he hasn't really watched that many movies. His references are totally different, so it was very exciting to work with someone who had just these ideas." I've seen people upset at the fact that he hasn't watched that many movies, and while I understand, I cannot help but be reminded by another very young filmmaker who used his ignorance to make film history.
What I'd like to know is, where did you get the confidence from to make a film with such...
Ignorance. Sheer ignorance. You know, there's no confidence to equal it. It's only when you know something about a profession, I think, that you're timid or careful.
The more virgin our eyes are, the more we have to say.
Look, I'm not expecting Kane Parsons to be the next Orson Welles or invent new cinema techniques, but in some ways, he is already a pioneer in his own way. By being one of the first studio filmmakers whose visual language and literacy is shaped by the internet's vast landscape of games, blogs, VFX tutorials, and creepypasta akin to contemporary folklore. I'm stoked. I thought Backrooms was fantastic. As someone who hates when something gets beaten into the ground with many sequels, this is perhaps one of the only IPs where I actually want to see more. That is quite major for me. But Backrooms or not, I'm very excited to see Kane Parsons expand his filmography over the next years. The last person on the shorts discovery list is Michael Shanks, not the actor, the director of the 2025 horror Together. On his YouTube channel TimTimFed, you'll find VFX heavy action/comedies from the early 2010s, a la Wesley Wang and Corridor Digital. However, when examining his career trajectory, there's another YouTube channel we need to take a close look at. And that's the YouTube channel for the video game website, The Escapist. At only 12 years old, Shanks won a competition with his web series pilot Doomsday Arcade. The prize? Funding to turn the pilot into a 25-episode series on The Escapist's channel.
Shanks, I think he's here to kill us.
What? You speak Japanese?
No, but I can read.
Shanks describes the making of it as his film school, shooting, writing, and editing it for 2 years straight. After wrapping on the series, he went on to continue with his own YouTube channel, directing music videos, skits, and getting started on his next short film, Time Trap. He then strategically uploaded this short right after the viral success of his Force Awakens parody trailer, which I remember seeing back in the day on 9gag. The large traffic directed on his viral hit helped him land a lot of views for his short film, which led to him getting signed with a talent agency in LA. Eventually, he went on to direct for the big screen with Together. But before he got started with that, he continued on the small screen with a new web series called The Wizards of Oz, this time living on his own YouTube channel. Also, I want to squeeze in a little short film recommendation in here, which comes with no shade whatsoever. Maybe you know, there was some plagiarism accusations towards his film Together. I don't really have much to say on that, but one of the filmmakers I was not happy was Benjamin Brewer, and it's his short film that I want to give a shout out to. It's called A Folded Ocean, which I saw before seeing Together, and it really did get under my skin. That being said, I hope and choose to believe that there was no plagiarism involved, and that the concept of a couple literally becoming one explored through body horror was a concept bound to be explored sooner or later. Right?
I love you.
Now we're moving on to the established status category of YouTuber filmmakers. And once again, what I mean by that is that this group of creators got their feature off the ground more or less through leveraging their audience or their status and platform, instead of one viral short. We'll kick things off with another chance to be eligible for a YouTube Veterans discount. Ladies and gentlemen, a YouTube pioneer and all around a ball of creativity, Mystery Guitar Man, aka Joe Penna. What a throwback, right? No? Yes? I don't know. Am I old? Surely not. I'm not. Mystery Guitar Man is one of the first YouTubers to break out into Hollywood and the only one who's entered the official competition in Cannes. The film, Arctic, starring Mads Mikkelsen. Now, how to describe his YouTube videos? Experimentations in music and video, perhaps? I don't know. He's one of the forefathers of YouTube in my opinion. And even if you haven't seen his videos, you still might have seen one where he was behind the camera, like the Rhett and Link t-shirt battle. In the early years of YouTube, for many filmmakers, it was less of a platform to build a career in, but more to build a career from. For Joe Penna, it was a creative outlet. He did not intend to make a transition into feature-length films whatsoever, but funny how life goes. His YouTube videos led to him directing music videos, and directing music videos led to him to realize that he does actually have a knack for narrative. From that point onwards, Penna started focusing his pen on short films, and then eventually making the successful jump to get his feature script greenlit. He talks more in depth about his journey on the podcast with the Corridor crew, but what I especially found interesting in their conversation is that his producer did not know about his YouTube channel until he was in production.
My producers didn't know that I had a YouTube channel until I was in Iceland.
Really?
Making the film, yeah. They were like, they came up to me and they said, "What's this magic guitar thing that you have on Twitter?"
In the grand scheme of things, YouTube was the inception of his journey, and a crucial platform where he made connections and cut his teeth. But from an industry standpoint, turns out his channel, which has over 2.5 million subscribers, was not a factor in him securing the green light for Arctic.
Was that not the reason why you guys hired me? Was because my YouTube channel? They're like, "No, we hired you because you sent us a link to a good short film."
So I guess he could technically fall into the short film discovery category, but without YouTube, there wouldn't be a short. Anyway, who cares? Good for him. Let's move on with the elephant in the room, with one of the buzziest debuts in recent memory. Well, Obsession and Backrooms kind of overshadowed its success, but anyway. Of course, I'm talking about the chaotic minds behind Talk to Me, the Philippou Brothers, aka Raka Raka. Growing up on YouTube, I watched a lot of VFX and action shorts. And because of how young I was, I sometimes was taking the craft for granted. I thought it's on the homepage of YouTube, so it better be good. However, one video that blew me away and I did not take for granted was Raka Raka's Marvel vs. DC. At first, it came across super trashy, with bad outfits and an underwhelming set, until it kicks off. The low effort look turned out to be its main strength. It's where the humor comes from, because the whole thing is anything but low effort, with real stunts and special effects. I could not believe what I was watching. It felt expertly crafted, yet also held together by duct tape. There's clearly a good budget behind it, and its filmmakers know what to spend it on and what to cheap out on. It's honestly very impressive filmmaking, and I'm not even going to touch how competently edited it is. All to say that the Philippou Brothers clearly had the juice all along. They got into YouTube because they wanted to be filmmakers. However, before that, they were working on film sets, not realizing that they were actually making the connections to fully realize Talk to Me with Causeway Films. What really set the film in motion was actually YouTube being a buzzkill, to put it lightly, when they started to demonetize their cartoonishly violent videos. This led to Danny writing the script for Talk to Me, confused with what the future of their channel would look like, but also with the need of wanting to tell more personal stories. The video of Danny finding out that they got the financing for their film is incredible, and the video of them getting into Sundance and selling the film to A24 is even better. I'm glad they were able to make the jump from YouTube to A24, who seems to be keeping them close. I mean, A24 knows Ball. Kyle Edward Ball. They're working with him on his next feature-length film, The Land of Nod. Ball is the filmmaker behind Skinamarink, the Marmite equivalent of film. It's an experimental horror feature that grossed over 130 times its original micro budget, making it a huge success. The film, due to its ambiguity, is described in many different ways, but one of them is a nightmare you've had as a child. And although that sounds quite specific, what Ball has conjured up with this filmmaking has summoned a universal feeling and memory that I haven't seen anyone else tap into before. Regardless of where you fall with Skinamarink, you have to admit at the very least it's something new. Or maybe not so new if you were already a long-time follower of Ball's YouTube channel, Bite-Sized Nightmares. It's the channel where he pretty much cultivated his unique approach to filmmaking. attempting to recreate the nightmares of various online users. In reading so many different nightmares, Ball started noticing recurring similarities between them, which was all a major influence for Skinamarink. But it was not only the nightmares of his followers that made the film possible, it was also their donations. Ball crowdfunded the feature on Seed and Spark, where he linked his short film Heck as a proof of concept for what Skinamarink would be like in tone and style. The reported budget for the film was $15,000, which is practically chump change in relation to other movie budgets, but it's still a hefty amount for an experimental filmmaker to play around with. I find it quite beautiful to have your film made by the online community you fostered.
In this house.
It's a similar-ish case for Chris Stuckmann, who broke crowdfunding records for his film Shelby Oaks. It remains and might remain for a long time the highest funded horror film project. The campaign in total raised close to $1.4 million, while the initial goal was only $250,000. Chris Stuckmann's subscribers really came through, supporting the movie reviewer who's been doing this for a long time. I used to watch Chris quite often back in the day. I vividly remember him giving Mad Max Fury Road an A+ because I was in school and I just couldn't wait for it to be over so I could watch the film. And of course the film exceeded all of those expectations. He's been dropping reviews for a long time, becoming a routine in the lives of the audience he's built. An audience that proved to be supportive of his ambitions as a filmmaker. However, in the making of Shelby Oaks, the crowdfund is only half the story, because originally the film never intended to rely on public support. Stuckmann for a while now had been building industry connections with the hopes of one day transitioning from YouTube into making films. He then initially found a home for Shelby Oaks in Paper Street Pictures, a boutique production house in the company's own words, so far from a major studio, with a catalog that consists mostly of straight-to-video horror films. It seems as though Shelby Oaks was destined for a similar path. Everything changed when traditional financing proved to be insufficient, with the upcoming strikes being a major roadblock. That's when the production turned to crowdfunding, and we know the rest. Except, there is more. Of course, after the incredible success of the crowdfund, heads in the industry turned. During the post-production, director Mike Flanagan came on board as a producer, marking a full circle moment since the two struck up a friendship years earlier after Stuckmann's review of Oculus. But that's not all, folks. After the film's premiere at Fantasia, Neon came on board, not only as a distributor but also to help Stuckmann realize his full vision of the script. There were scenes from the script that never got shot due to budgetary constraints, which Neon helped out with in the reshoots. This, of course, is all a semi-skimmed retelling of what actually went down. But if you like the full fat version, check out the Shelby Oaks videos on Chris Stuckmann's channel. He's as transparent as he professionally can be, and of course he will always do a better job at retelling what actually went down than me. Instead, I'm more interested in talking about the success of the crowdfund. It's weird, it's crazy that it made as much money as it did, but also on the other hand, it's just simple maths, and the fruits of his long, winding journey on the platform. I think there is still a major underestimation of online audiences in Hollywood, which I think fools online creators into thinking that their influence and power is not legit, when it clearly is. Legitimacy and influence has been long associated with TV appearances, studio deals, theatrical releases, and other forms of recognition gate-kept by long-standing media institutes. And okay, the power they hold is clearly undeniable, but perhaps their most successful construction is the illusion that online creators who generate millions of views operate in another world. This is as good of a segue as it gets for Markiplier and the incredible success of his completely independently funded and distributed film. There are a lot of conversations on how the success of the film might change the game for independent films, and rightfully so. Let's start with the not so exciting part. The funding. There's nothing really revolutionary going on here. It's self-funded, which might sound exciting at first, but then you realize it's shot for over $4 million. That's more money than the budget for studio-backed films such as Shelby Oaks, Obsession, 8th Grade, Columbus, and roughly around the same as Talk to Me and Lights Out. 99% of independent filmmakers, of course, don't have that kind of money, which is why I see fellow filmmakers disregard the success of this project altogether, which is not good. I think the main takeaway from Iron Lung should be its distribution story. You see crowd-funded and self-funded films here and there, but self-distributed films are a much more rare case, and for a good reason. Independent filmmakers lack the infrastructure. They lack the relationships, they lack the demand to program their films in theaters. It could be the best film ever made, but without any demand, no theater will pick it up. Markiplier lacks the infrastructure and the relationships, but one thing he had was the demand, and it quickly proved that a direct line to millions of followers online can in fact translate to real bucks and butts on seats. Originally, the film was supposed to play in 50 to 60 cinemas around the US, which still is only achievable with a certain status, but then it quickly snowballed into more and more theaters due to the large demand from his fan base emailing local cinemas. Eventually, the cinemas that didn't show it started to have a little bit of fear of missing out and then caved in. I think down the line Markiplier did work with a distributor, but that was primarily for global distribution. He himself did not conceive of the film being as big as it is, showing in as much cinemas as it did, because just like I said previously, media institutes like Hollywood have constructed the illusion that online creators operate outside their world of cinemas and TV and whatnot. And the creators that wield an army of millions don't recognize the extent of their own power as a result. But perhaps it's less of a construction, but an actual blind spot. Something they don't quite understand or underestimate, even though their job consists of looking at numbers all the damn time. Because here's the thing, Iron Lung was not always meant to be independent. It only ended up being so because Markiplier couldn't settle for a good deal. Let's go back to 2019. Have you heard of The Edge of Sleep? It's a TV series executive produced by and starring Markiplier, which premiered on Amazon Prime and it apparently did numbers. But before it was a TV series, it was a podcast, but it was never meant to be. It was made into a podcast to prove to studios that passed on it that Markiplier sells. It wasn't just to show that the story works, but that Markiplier works and that he's a peer worth taking seriously. The idea to do a podcast came from Markiplier's talent agent, after he couldn't get any love and respect for him in the market. After proving himself with the numbers and demand, the switch just flipped, not just for studio executives, but also for Markiplier. He realized the power he holds. So when it came to making his feature directorial debut, if he didn't get it his way, he was ready to bet on himself and his platform and self-fund the whole thing. Quote, "There is still a stigma against YouTube. One of the reasons why I really wanted this to work, at least some degree of success. I didn't expect this degree. Is to help move that mountain. It's not like I'm going to topple the mountain by myself. It has to be toppled and then toppled again, until it becomes normalized. Once it becomes normalized, then it can become boring, and it's like, of course a YouTuber can do this, and there's nothing to question about it." Yeah, here's the thing, I haven't told you that about the Philippou Brothers. In their experience of reaching out to production companies, apparently their status as YouTubers did not help them at all. Quote, "There's a weird stigma that comes with being a YouTuber when you're trying to do stuff outside of YouTube. It's kind of like, yeah, you're a YouTuber, but you're not a filmmaker. Stay in the YouTube queue." And in their interview with Variety, they mentioned that their YouTube would be a talking point in meetings, but not a good one. They kind of laugh it off and say what they were doing wasn't any deep stuff and just Nerf gun wars. But that doesn't mean it's without any filmmaking merit. And of course, I would assume they know that, but you can tell the industry skepticism has led them to think differently about their own work. YouTube might not be a traditional gateway yet. But on paper, these online creators who connect with millions through their work is technically on paper what studios are looking for. Some of them are essentially audience tested and approved filmmakers. I think what happens is that some producers are scared and maybe a bit overwhelmed by change, by democratized platforms such as YouTube that connect filmmakers to audiences instead of them. It almost robs them of a certain power, which they still very much have, but might be scared to lose. Almost all of the filmmakers I have mentioned worked with studios to get their films made, except for Markiplier and Kyle Edward Ball. It took Chris Stuckmann, a small production company, to take a chance on him to get started on Shelby Oaks, but then through the crowdfund, he realized he had an army of supporters all along. I know that not everyone has the power they hold in terms of audience and influence, but Kyle Edward Ball, with his small modest following, still managed to raise $15,000 for his film. And how did he gain said modest following? By making films and uploading them, honing his skill, rather than sending cold emails and awaiting a return. Now, I'm also aware that this is all a bit of a survivorship bias, meaning that by design I'm focused on the filmmakers that made it, and not the hundreds and thousands that didn't. That being said, in my own humble opinion, I have found YouTube to give me better odds than a festival programmer, or someone who approves funding for short films, job employers, and what have you. Anyone who says yes or no, essentially. This channel started at a time where I felt very hopeless, and right now I am extremely proud of what it has become. None of my short films actually live on this channel, and I've never even advertised them on here, but I think this is a good time to do so. I'm assuming that this video will be one that's especially going to appeal to filmmakers, because the one thing we all yearn for is an answer on what path we should take. This makes us carefully inspect what others before us have done. And while there is no right answer, the future that was promised through the democratized internet, where someone can shine through their ideas and merit whilst connecting with audiences, might be a delusion worth subscribing to. Because at the very least, you'll be making films instead of waiting for approval. That about does it for this video. Psych! I've got some additional words to add from the future, although nothing that changes the core of what I just said. The fact that a new Star Wars film was buried behind two original films in the box office, both of which were directed by Gen Zers who've used YouTube as their main source of distribution for the work, might have changed the way the industry will perceive YouTube as a talent pool. Perhaps the stigma that the Philippou Brothers and Markiplier faced will be no more, or a little less. The success of both films, Obsession especially, is downright historical. And as we know, the industry loves taking lessons. Usually the wrong one, but nonetheless a lesson. The obvious correlation with Obsession and Backrooms is YouTube, which of course has prompted every Hollywood reporter to yell about it. This as a result seems to have pushed Curry Barker and Kane Parsons to feel at arm's length from the YouTube movement, which I understand because I do think it's less of a movement, but a new norm. A norm that's perhaps long overdue. Because the barrier with YouTube wasn't connecting with audiences, it was connecting with the industry that was sat on its high horse. For many aspiring filmmakers, the road to legitimacy was anything but having your film be sat online. Instead, it was film festivals, networking, securing representation, applying for funds from media institutions. But perhaps now, YouTube will not only be a platform where filmmakers start their journey, but also emerge from. I mean, look, every future filmmaker will probably be a YouTuber more or less, whatever that means at this point. Because if you make films, where else are you gonna upload it?